What are we getting wrong about small business branding? It's actually pretty simple. There's one super important thing, massive, huge thing that everyone is getting wrong about small business branding. And that is the idea that it is a set it and forget it kind of situation. Your small business brand is not something that you can just do and be done with. Really super awesomely not. It is not that at all. Okay. So what is a small business brand and how can we actually make one that, is real and not rubbing against this one huge, massive thing that people are getting wrong? The way that we do that is to address our expectations versus our reality. So what is the expectation, especially when someone is first getting started with their small business and they are trying to do branding, or if you've been in a small business for a long time and you are trying to become a brand or start branding, the idea, the expectation that people have in this process is that you hire someone who is going to get your logos and your colors and your typography and maybe even pick out a few really great brand images, help you develop a tagline, pick out some fonts, and maybe put them all together in a style guide. And that is your brand. That is your visual brand, meaning that is the thing that people will see and identify you by. That is your visual brand. So those little highlight stickers that everyone has on Instagram or the aesthetic grid and all of that is just brand elements. That's the visuals of your brand. That is not your brand. So a lot of people have the expectation that the visual brand, once they align all the visuals together, that in and of itself will be the brand. And then they can just go from there and whatever they create is whatever they created. And that is it. And there we go. Now, the big, huge hulking secret thing that everybody's getting wrong there is, first of all, as a small business owner, often we have to make adjustments and changes, and you have to be able to move and do things differently. And if you are paying for and getting a really great visual brand, and then you feel at that point, especially if you paid a lot of money for it, that you're married to it, like I have to use all of these images. I went and did a photo shoot. I have to use all of this stuff because it was created. That's a lot of times the expectation, but then you go to implement these things and they don't match what you were expecting for them to do in reality, meaning that you visually make everything cohesive and it's all beautiful, but your fan count doesn't change. You visually make your blog beautiful, but your visitors on your blog does not change. You have all of these great images that you're using in your feed and your fan count doesn't change, your engagement doesn't change, your click-through rate doesn't change. All of those things are coming together, but none of those things make the changes happen that you are expecting. And that is massive. And it is such a huge thing that we're getting wrong. That expectation that you're going to do it, like you're going to put the brand out there and then be like, if you build it, they will come. That is the expectation that people have. And I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt that it is not true. And it is not true for a variety of reasons, including, like I said, because your expectation that is going to happen is not aligned with anybody's reality. In all reality, things change, A. And B, your visual design is not your brand. It is just a part of your brand. And so the visual design will not make anything happen for you. Having a beautifully designed website will not make people show up to your website. Having really awesome SEO might. And that is not your brand. That's not what people think a brand is, though. So when I say having really awesome SEO, people are like, what do you mean? I got all these great colors and stuff, and I have a great header. Why isn't that working? I'm like, that is not the only thing that is going to drive traffic to your website. There are so many other elements. And on top of that, Google, seriously, don't think they care about what color your website is. As long as it's readable, that's really what's important to them. And so if we're talking about actually getting customers and making money, which is what, as small business owners, we should be concerned about, number one, get customers, make money, then the visual aspects of your brand are meant to serve you getting customers and making money. If the visual aspects of your brand do serve you getting customers and making money, then yay. But if the visual aspects of your brand do not serve you getting customers and making money, then boo, right? Boo on that. Okay. And so let us talk about each of the elements that people think a brand is and how we can adjust them to fit more in line with what reality is and how things actually work in the real world with your customer. The number one thing that people think is their brand is their logo. So everyone thinks that their logo is their brand. Your logo is your brand. It's the thing that makes people identify who you are. I can tell you from experience myself and from watching marketing happen in the real world that your logo is not your brand, not by a long shot. I have one of my favorite things to do is to play trivia on a weekly basis. And one of the trivia games that we have played on the trivia places, like people who create the trivia game where we play trivia, loves to do logo mashups and things like that. And it is amazing how infrequently people get logo mashups correctly. You would think by the way that small business owners attach value to these logos that we would all know what a BMW logo looks like. Like we would know, or we would all know what a Subaru logo looks like. Like we see Toyotas every single day, but unless you own one, the likelihood that you can draw the Toyota logo is actually pretty low because it's not that important. Before people were told explicitly that the Starbucks logo was a mermaid, they did not know. And I would bet you that there's someone watching this right now going, oh, it's a mermaid. Yes. Like it's not that important. The logo itself does not actually usually communicate that much value to the customer. So there are some brands where the logo creates or communicates a lot of value to the customer, but most brands, that's not the case. So with some brands like shoe brands, Nike is a great example of a brand where the logo itself is such an ingrained part of what they're selling that if the Nike logo is not on the product, essentially it's not a Nike product because the logo, the swoosh, is their product. It's like the brand, the logo, the whole thing goes together. And if you don't have it on there, just having the word Nike in your hang tag does not sell the shirt or does not sell the pair of pants. It does not sell the shoes. For certain, it doesn't sell the shoes. If there's no swoosh, it is not a Nike. It will be anything else, but it is not a Nike if there's no swoosh. And so there are some things for which that is the case, but most things, the vast majority of them, the logo is not the brand. And that is the one thing that as small business owners, we tend to get super heavily involved in. We get super crazy, go all out, like trying to figure out how to make the logo exactly. And in all reality, the logo isn't that important. Matter of fact, you can change your logo and like only certain people are going to notice. And as a small business, you should be moving towards your customer. So if you are creating brand elements and over time maybe your customer segments are shifting, or you're going to change your business model from a B2B to a B2C, or whatever that looks like, you might want to change your visual elements in order to align better with what your actual customer experience is, instead of trying to stick your brand in place and make your customers align with you. Because this is not about you. This is about them. And your logo is not about you. Your logo is about them. There are very few small business owners. I would venture to say none of us small business owners can be so vain as to think that your logo is something you shouldn't change if it doesn't serve your customer. Your logo, everything about your business should be serving your customer's need. It should always be signaling your value to your customer. And if it's not signaling the value to your customer, it is not making that plain to them, change it, period. Because the reality is, if it doesn't do those things, it is not serving a purpose in your business. Now, as for your colors, your name, your colors and your name, let's just talk about those two. That's the last one, so it's super important. Your colors. Again, something that can be changed and should be changed if for some reason they are not aligning with your audience. So if you have a brand, or if you experience your colors in the real world and they do not align with what you expected, if they're not falling into formation, if they're not falling into formation with what it is that your messaging is, then yes, you should change your colors. What you should maybe not do is change your colors because Instagram aesthetics changed from soft peach and brown to yellow and black. Like, you shouldn't just go changing your logo because that's what the trend is. I am not saying that at all. So I'm not a fan of following trends because trends mean nothing unless your customer is literally a 20-year-old trend seeker. So if your customer is that person, then maybe you can get away with that. But even then, I would say your logo, your colors should be black and white. And then your brand identity is trending, meaning so the colors that you apply, the way you apply your black or white logo really adheres to what the customer's experience is as far as trends. So there's a brand out there called Fashion Nova that does this very well. I believe their brand colors are very much black and white. And then they change their branding and everything associated with their colors for color schemes and things like that, according to what is trending. But they are also a fashion company, and they've done that very smartly. So they have a logo and other types of branding elements that are, again, not a major feature of their clothing, so that they can switch it up. They can apply their logo in different ways. They can apply their branding in different ways. But in all reality, the colors are something that they can go with the flow on, but that is a part of the brand that they've developed. Like, they've developed that brand because their brand is a trendy fashion company. If your brand is not a trendy fashion company, then you shouldn't be trying to do that. So you can go to their website and it will have different color aesthetics on a regular basis because they're a trendy fashion company and they're following their customer, right? So what we should be doing as small business owners is following our customers. Now, what does that mean? That means that if you personally are rainbow bright, like me, I am always in somebody's multicolored something. If that is not where your customer is, then you may want to find a way to pull yourself more in line with what your customer's aesthetic is. If your customer's aesthetic is not yellow and black, even though that is the aesthetic that works best for you, you may want to consider how to take your yellow and black aesthetic that you have and incorporate it more in line of what your customer actually wants. Branding, again, is not set it and forget it. So if you create this big old yellow and black brand and you realize, oh, I've designed a whole bumblebee thing and it's not going to work because it all looks like bumblebees and that is not what my customer actually appreciates, and there's no way for me to communicate value as a bumblebee, then you should change your branding, right? Like, you should change it to fit your reality. There is nothing wrong with that. As someone who does marketing for a living, I will tell you there is nothing wrong with changing. What's wrong is trying to shoehorn your customer into your brand because you created it, you paid for it, the visual is all you care about, and the customer has to live with what you did. And that is not reality. Reality is the customer will not live with what you did. The customer will do whatever the customer is going to do. And if you do not align yourself with the customer, walk away, and you will lose a customer. And that is not what we are interested in. We are not interested in serving our own vanity. We are interested in serving our customer. Okay. This is not about you. This is about them. Now, as far as naming is concerned, naming is another one of those elements with your brand that, again, we get tied to it. We think, oh, we can't change our name because we've had it for X amount of times, or we have this certain URL. You would not believe how frequently I have consulting appointments with people who want to change the name of their business, and they feel like I can't because I already had a logo created with that name. And I'm like, what do you want to change it to? And how does that align with your customer? The first question I always ask, what do you want to change it to? I want to know what you want to change it to. And then secondarily, how does that align with your customer? And once we start having that conversation, we can decide whether or not changing your logo, changing your colors, changing your name, any of those things actually makes sense for your business. Because who is the most important thing in your brand? Your customer. It is not you. It is not your colors. It is not how you see the world. These things are not that important. What's most important is how your customer sees the world. And so what we have to do as small business owners is care more about them and more about what they want than about what we want. And so that's the huge thing there. It's like, we just have to align with what their values are and what their desires are and go from there. How does that work? When I say aligning with them, again, if you're talking about naming very specifically, if you have a business name, like I had a business name that did not align with anything because I made it up, and it was just based on the idea of Google's a nonsense word. Like I should have a nonsense word. Like I literally had that exact completely crazy thought. And at the time I was in, let's just say I was in business environments where people were teaching me that was what you should do. Since I have learned that they were wrong and that is not what you should do, you should actually do market research and try to figure out how to align your business name with your customer. And at the time, I created business names, several in a row, business names that none of which aligned with what I did in particular or who my customer was. And because of that, I had my business name called Cute a lot. People were like, oh, that's cute, or it's clever. And I pretty much know now, and you should know too, that if people are calling your business name cute or clever, it's usually because it doesn't actually tell them anything about what you do or who your business is and who your customer is. None of that. And so if that is the case, then you should consider changing your name because your name is not serving your customer. If your customer cannot look at your name and go, yep, I want that, or yes, I understand that. I understand what that means. I think that works for me. If you're a fashion brand, Nike, and even Nike actually means something. And like the term Nike means something very specific. It is a Greek god, or is it a Roman god? I can never tell the difference between the two. Did you get the idea? Speed and strength. Like that is what Nike means. And so the word Nike actually does mean something for the customer. Now, Starbucks, on the other hand, does not. Like that's a mermaid. It's a whole lore from the sea in Seattle. It has nothing to do with coffee, but it was the name of the business when it was purchased at first. So it was like when you buy a dog or you get a dog from the pound and they come with a name and you just keep it because it looks good on the like the chain and everything. That was where Starbucks was. And they were very fortunate because at the time they actually sold a product that well outpaced the market. And so they were okay. Like they did fine with having a name that did not align with what their product was. But Dunkin' Donuts, on the other hand, oh my goodness, perfect name alignment. Dunkin' Donuts, coffee, donuts. That's it. They sell other stuff, but not really what most people go in there for is coffee and donuts. And so if you're thinking about what your name is, it should in some way evoke something from your customer. If it doesn't, then you may want to consider a name change. And you may want to make sure that your name that you're changing to does align with your customer and what your customer wants and not with what you think you want or what you think the world should do, because this is not about you. It is about them. Now, a fourth element that people rarely talk about when it comes to like visual branding or branding is the words that are used to describe your business. Now, I'm not just talking about your tagline, even though your tagline is a part of this, but what is the elevator pitch, or what are the key words that you are using to describe your company? Now, a lot of times, again, we get married to these things. Like we create this cute or clever tagline. We have someone create a cute or clever tagline. I have done this for myself back in the old days when I was doing property management applications and marketing, where I had cute and clever product names that had nothing to do with what my customer wanted. They were very much not in alignment with my customer, which was property management companies. And it was interesting because I can see that clearly now as someone who basically moved into marketing because of how poorly I was marketing back then. And it just is transformational. The ability to switch your words, switch your phrases, align better with what your actual customer is saying and doing and feeling and what their motivations are. If your tagline and your elevator pitch and the simple keywords that you are using to describe your business can align with your customer, you win. Okay. So the number one thing, again, going back to that number one thing that we all need to do is just stop thinking that branding is something that happens and then it's done. In all reality, your brand is a living thing, and it is a living thing that is not just logos and colors, and it's not just that. But those living elements, even those visual elements, the fonts, all of that is a living thing. And if your living thing is not growing and evolving with your customer, you are absolutely getting it wrong. We should all be growing and evolving, even as small business owners. It is up to us as small business owners, there isn't anyone else who's going to tell you. No one is going to step in and say, girl, your brand is outdated. No one is going to do that. Okay, maybe I would do that, but no one else is going to do that. And because no one is going to do it, you have to be the person who does it for yourself. You have to look at your audience and say, what is my audience doing? And how does my brand line up with them? How is my color scheme lining up with them? How is my logo lining up with them? How are the ways that I communicate what I do? How is that lining up with what they want? And if you can say it's lining up, then maybe not make changes. You're good. You can keep what you got. But if it's not lining up, maybe there's a few elements here or there that you actually need to adjust and actually need to change. And that's going to be on you. But again, don't get this wrong. Make the changes, align with your customer. It's the only thing that actually matters. Now that you have thought through these core concepts, I am going to challenge you to take this one step further. We have a small business brand audit that really helps you to walk through your small business and determine where you are right now. It helps you identify your customer's perspective and help you position your brand based on your competitive evaluations. It also helps you to align yourself through mapping your customer's motivations. And all of these things can actually help you to determine, again, where your small business fits on the path to actually being a brand. This self-guided brand audit is completely free and available to you at the link that is going to be somewhere. How links are, they move. I don't know where it's going to be, but it's going to be somewhere very near. And you will have the opportunity to download this audit and take it yourself. It is in the format of a PDF download. So once you actually download it, it is available to you to use whenever you see fit. It consists of 8 videos as well as 14 pages of workbook that allow you to work through some instructional activities to actually help you to move yourself more in alignment with your brand, move your small business into alignment with your brand, and actually help you make that transition from kind of small business owner into a brand, which is, of course, what we are all aiming to do. When you're trying to learn and grow, that is always the aim, is to get ourselves to the point where we are not just a small business owner, but we are the owners of a brand. I encourage you to go ahead and download that small business brand audit. It is completely free. Click the link to get yourself started, and I will see you on the inside of the brand audit.